What's up, everybody? I hope you're doing good. Today is a beautiful again. Have you noticed that with me, every day is a beautiful day? It is a beautiful day indeed. Africa has gone through so many things for so many years. Today, we're going to pay attention to one of our brothers, Julius Malema of South Africa, the leader of the EFF. Props to him on a very interesting speech he had made. We're going to listen to him and I'm going to make a comment. Let's go.
In this day and era, you still have a situation where there are African states paying colonial tax to France. France, it is what it is because of those African states. You have the reserve banks of African states in France and not in Africa itself. And we must accept that and say it is acceptable, it is in the interest of Africa. It is not. We want Africans to have control over their own currency. We want Africans to have control over their own economy and what constitutes their own economy.
Very interesting, very strong word from Julius Malema. France needs Africa. Africa doesn't need France. Why is that? For some of you who know, for many, many years, Africa was first attacked. They took many of our brothers up to the United States, to the Caribbean to go work as slave, and they were persecuted. They lived in atrocious moments, very shameful, very degrading and humiliating. Then they came with colonialism. They split Africa into small portions, small boxes that they call country. This became South Africa, the other one became Benin, then Togo, then Ghana, then Nigeria, Cameroon. We were all a land. We were just one land at the time. But then they came and separated each land. They took one portion and assigned it to one country. Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, Kenya were assigned to Britain, while some other countries like Cote d'Ivoire, Benin, Togo, Senegal were assigned to French. Now, the French came into Africa and they did what they did. Then after the colonialism, they didn't really leave Africa. They stayed in power, controlling Africa, controlling its economy and its people. Julius Malema has mentioned here, France needs Africa. Africa doesn't need France. And the president admitted it. This is the French former president Jacques Chirac. Let's listen to him.
On oublie seulement une chose, c'est qu'une grande partie de l'argent qui est dans notre porte-monnaie vient précisément de l'exploitation depuis des siècles de l'Afrique. Pas uniquement, mais beaucoup viennent de l'exploitation de l'Afrique. Alors, il faut avoir un petit peu de bon sens, je ne dis pas de générosité, de bon sens, de justice pour rendre aux Africains, je dirais, ce qu'on leur a pris, d'autant que c'est nécessaire si l'on veut éviter les pires convulsions ou difficultés avec les conséquences politiques que ça comporte dans le prochain avenir.
Very interesting. Isn't that interesting? This is the French president, a former French president. He was president at the time when he made mention of this. He said France needs Africa. Africa doesn't need France. So most of the money that we make in France come from Africa. So France without Africa would have been a very poor country. But in the meantime, they make you believe that you need them more than they need you. Of course, they have to play a game. Unfortunately, the hands and the manipulation of the French, and I want to say French, I'm not talking about French people, but I'm talking about the French oligarchy who are controlling even the French people, are the people that are trying to run Africa on that side. Fellas, in some countries like Senegal, Benin, Togo, Ivory Coast, French companies control all the economy. So all the big businesses, sustainable businesses, belong to the French. So in other words, we've given you independence. You can run your own country, but we're choosing your president. Yeah, we're going to choose him. If he works for us, for our interest, he's a good president. Doesn't matter what he does. If he doesn't work for our benefit, then he's not a good president. We're going to start calling him out a dictator. We're going to push him out. If we don't push him out, we're going to make sure he gets out. Just to put into context, like a few years back, the French army bombarded Ivory Coast based on internal issues. At the time, one Ivory Coast president had issues with his population. French people came and bombarded the capital. Who does that to a foreign country? How did they get the power to do that? Because they have their army in many places in Africa. So Julius Malema and the EFF went walking in the street asking for respect. And let's watch this. So what I have to say here, I have to stop this very quickly. The issue we have here is what? It's shameful to see that in South Africa, a group of people in the EFF went marching all the way to the French embassy, asking them to leave Africa alone. In the meantime, people living in those African ex-French colonies have not the courage to stand up and do the same. Why? Because they're probably going to get shot. They're probably going to get beaten and thrown in jail for standing up for their right. Let's watch.
And if they don't come outside, we are not going to leave here until they come outside. So they must stop wasting our time. We are not here to play games here. If they think we are part of the nonsense they've been doing in West Africa, it stops here. We are not West Africa. And we're not going to allow that nonsense. We come here peacefully. And we want the France embassy to act peacefully and not provoke us. So they must come outside and receive the memorandum. Otherwise, we are not going to start. Otherwise, we are not going to live here. And by not living here, they will not live here. We are going to divide ourselves. Others will go and occupy the main road there. And others will occupy the gate of France embassy. So stop wasting time.
So this is, again, what I really appreciate about Julius Malema and some of these strong figures of Africa, of the future. They came to the embassy and asking the ambassador to come, and the ambassador ignored them. They didn't come out. He said, we want to give you the memorandum that asks you to leave Africa. You and your troops, leave Africa. Africa doesn't need you. The French ambassador ignored them for hours. Then they say, you know what? Don't waste our time. This is not West Africa, okay? This is South Africa. We're waiting for you. We've come in peace. If you want peace, come outside before we make any scenes out here. And eventually the French ambassador came outside and took the memorandum to make peace. Now let me tell you, had this happened in Cameroon or Ivory Coast or Benin or Togo, these people would have been beaten by the police. Yes, their own police would have taken care of business. Their own police would have chased them to their houses. Their own police would have tracked them to their families. That's the level of control that France has in most of these countries. It's very, very sad looking at countries where big businesses belong to France. Big enterprises belong to France. The people of the countries are just consumers. And the only way they can progress is if they work for French people. It doesn't make sense. Look at the French ambassador. He eventually came outside to take the memorandum.
I want to say
that's
that
how you get respect.
The EFF as a political movement. Also, I think you are very good organizers. You came to see us today, so it was normal to come out and to receive your memorandum. We cannot sign the memorandum because it's your memorandum, but we will convey the memorandum to Paris. And also, I want to say an important message, that we have our disagreement, okay? And today, France is a partner with Africa, and we are friends of the African nation. Thank you very much.
This is what it is. And what I believe really motivated Julius Malema in this demarche was the African continent as the Pan-African Chamber, where Africa discuss issues within Africa on how to resolve them. This is where some of the representatives of many countries in Africa come together and have a discussion about how do we move forward, how do we work. Now, for many, many years, ex-French colonies occupied the leadership of this chamber. Okay, they made the decisions. The leadership was initially supposed to be rotating, like different areas of Africa, different regional side of Africa will take the leadership. Now, they made sure that they continuously stayed in power so they can make the decisions, often dictated from Paris. In the meantime, we have Africans uniting in a discussion within Africans, but a certain group of Africans are getting orders and ideas from France with the ultimate goal of benefiting France's oligarchy. And they even had an issue in the parliament where they almost fought over this situation on how they should rotate power within this chamber. Now, Julius Malema stood very strong in his speech about this.
Since its formation, PAP
has not had any president from the northern and southern region. The East, the West, and Central region, dominated by Francophone countries, have historically used their numerical strength to block the practice of rotation. Despite the AU's advice that PAP must comply with the rotational principle, the dominant regions sought to ignore this and proceed with elections. Over the years, France has manipulated these numbers to impose a candidate of their choice. This explains why during last term elections, the France foreign minister addressed PAP without initially being scheduled in accordance with the program soon after a Francophone candidate was elected.
Very interesting. Again, you will not see a Francophone country or representative speak out about this issue because they are too scared of repercussion. Let me put it this way for you. France has its military in many countries in African Francophone. France owns reserve banks of many of these African Francophone. France gets every year a tax from these African countries. So these African ex-French colonies pay every year tax back to France. Yes, from your economy, there's a portion of your economy that goes back to France. Why? In the name of colonialism. So because we colonize you, you're going to pay us every year. For what? For nothing. For us beating you up, for us pulling your ears, for us sending you to the forest, for us training you to speak French and teaching you how to eat pizza. So every year, all of these countries, Ivory Coast, Cameroon, Benin, Togo, Senegal, and moreover, send money back to France in the name of nothing as a colonialist tax. So French army are still posted in many of these countries. What are they doing there? We don't know. They were supposed to come to fight some sort of terrorism that was happening. But with time, the countries have realized there's more terrorism than there used to be in the past. So the French military supposedly came to fight terrorism. Many years later, terrorism is not over. Then Mali decided to kick them out. Yes, Mali said, we don't want you anymore. You gotta leave. Then Burkina Faso followed suit. Kick them out. We don't want you anymore. We can do it by ourselves. So again, fellas, this is just an insight to show you what this really is. We're going to watch one more time what Julius Malema had to say at this reunion.
Similarly, it is no coincidence that the President Emmanuel Macron visit to South Africa coincided with PAP's program to elect a president, which means Macron, like his Minister of Foreign Affairs, was meant to give a surprise visit and address the Pan-African Parliament with the hope that PAP will have elected their supported Francophone candidate. The refusal to implement the principle of rotation was to make way for the highly sponsored Mali candidate who landed with a private jet in South Africa. However, thanks to the resistance and formidable spirit of the Southern Caucus, supported by the Northern Caucus and all progressive members of the Pan-African Parliament, France's plot was defeated. We call on France to stay out of African affairs, in particular the Pan-African Parliament.
So many African countries up until now use what they call the CFA franc. The CFA franc was constructed all the way back to France. So basically the CFA franc that is used in many of these Francophone African countries are printed in France. So their reserve bank is in France. So France dictates on the value of the money. Just imagine that in 2023. In 2023, unbelievable. You have no army. You have French troops in your countries. They run your economy. Your reserve banks are all the way back to France. All the big enterprises and businesses belong to France. What are you really? You're just a tool they use, a consumer, to buy the product and come back and work for them. Thank you very much, fellas. I really appreciate you. We cannot fight things we don't understand. Again, let me put it this way. We have no issues with French people. We love French people. We have issue with the top oligarchs. Those ones are trying to control everybody. Those are trying to control even the French people as much as African people. Let me know how you feel. Share with us your thoughts about this. It's always a good pleasure to have you with us. If you want to join us, please feel free. Come and make this community much, much bigger. I hope to speak to you again very soon. God bless.